wait for some people to come in. Thank you. And my name's Marc Majers. I'm going to be one of the co-hosts for this event today. Welcome you to, this is hour 20, if you can believe it, of 24 hours of UX. And we're going nonstop, community-based conference. We're excited to have you here. And today, yes, we have a group from New Zealand that will be represented. And we wanted to let you know that we still have some tracks that are still left today. So please stick around to the end. We still have many hours to go here. We want you to keep your energy going. And we just wanted to let you know that as you're going through today, feel free. We have, as you've probably seen throughout our day, we want you to drop some questions into our QA and put some thoughts into our chat and welcome our group. Excited to have you here as we jump in this hour. And what's interesting is, I was just thinking about this before we jumped on, that we're in the final home stretch here of today's session. And I wondered from our audience out there, how many people, because I know there's some crown winners that have gone all the way through. And I wondered if we can get, a thumbs up or some kind of emoticon out there, maybe through our applause. How many people have made it through from the beginning? Is there anyone here that's attending that has made it all the way through to this session? We'll see if we get anybody. Because if so, we're going to have to acknowledge them and give them some quote unquote props out there. All right, well, that's good. So we have some people that are well rested. So that means they're going to be ready to give you some questions and keep the fire burning here at the session. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to turn it over to Nani, and I'm going to leave the stage. I'll be back later for our Q&A session. So over to you, Nani.
Thank you, Marc. Oh, hello. Hi, Fiona. Hi, everybody. Kia ora, Forever 24. Thank you for having us. Last year, I was a participant. And this year, I'm so happy that I get to be a speaker and share some great learnings that we did here in New Zealand in Aotearoa. I just want to say thank you to 24 Hours of UX for giving us a call to action, because we actually kind of forgot the work that we had done together over a year or so ago. So it was, in many ways, this was a bit of our retrospective of some of the work that we had done for basically Stuff, which is it's a New Zealand company, a news media company. And although I will say that Stuff is where we did say that this work is not about stuff. It's actually about the processes and the things that we did to create, something. So that's kind of where I want to leave that. But let's just move on. Let me go ahead and let me just share my screen. I forgot to do that. Let me go ahead and I think I do that one. Yay. I think that's right.
Yep, we can see it.
You guys can see it? Yes. Yay. All right, cool. Okay, cool. So let me just go ahead and go to the next one. Take it away, Tomu.
All right. Kia ora no tamaki makoro Aotearoa. Hello from Auckland, New Zealand. My name is Tomu. I'm here with Haunani and Fiona. And today we're going to talk about our journey of, how we started as complete strangers and created a new product at this company called Stuff. So this was my first internship experience. At the time, Haunani was a designer at the company and took on the role of being our mentor. Fiona and I were both interns. She came in as a designer at the time, and I came in as a developer. And I'll let you take it on from here, Nani.
Okay, cool. So So this is a story about making something new. But I guess the real thing is that this is a story about how to build a product concept against all odds. So I want to set the scene and just talk about a couple of players, a couple of people, or personas, if you wanted to. So I moved to New Zealand. I'm not originally from New Zealand. In fact, one thing to note is that Tomu and Fiona, they're Kiwis. You know, they were raised here as children. But I came here, I found love, moved to New Zealand in 2010, and I had just been working in the industry. And I came to Stuff as a consultant, as a vendor that did work for them. And the type of work that I did was, service design or strategies or product work for some of the things that they did. At the time, Stuff was owned by other companies, and they were also Australian companies. And to be honest, I can say that my idea of what news is and what news was when I was there, totally different. We have all these things. So Stuff is kind of the background of this thing. And then it used this service called Summer of Tech. Actually, Tomu, you want to talk a wee bit about Summer of Tech for everybody?
Sure, yeah. Summer of Tech was a internship program in New Zealand. They help connect like students who are studying like computer science or perhaps design with bigger tech companies around the city. So it just makes it easier for us to connect and get some experience in the industry.
Hey, Fiona, did you want to add anything about Summer of Tech?
I think she might have just lost connection. So.
Oh, okay. Well, I'll pretend I'm Fiona. But one of the things about Summer of Tech is that it really does connect a lot of I would say, the developers. People were studying how to be developers here at the different universities. But Fiona is a designer, and there's not a big designer outreach. And in fact, I'm always talking to people who are moving into design or whatnot. And that's a hard thing for designers, is to try to make those connections and entry into an internship. So it was great that these two Kiwi companies actually support the ability for us to get interns. So just to say a little bit more about that. So, we're upside down in the world. So while you guys are enjoying, summer in the Northern Hemisphere, we're actually beginning our winter. And so about 2 years ago, it looks like, this was an idea that was actually started by some of the managers at Stuff. I actually wasn't the one who created this, but they did all the work of having, to do the things that they had to work with Summer of Tech to get job descriptions out, make meetings, all these kind of things. Whereas I was just doing my job. It was doing product design and, making customer journey maps or frameworks or things like that. So after they got that done, they have something in the spring where it's sort of a meet and greet. And they had like 120 students from all the different Auckland universities come together with the different companies, and you just met each other. And, I went there and I kind of just took pictures, meaning like scanning things of getting all these different interested students, just so we had the information. And one of the things to note is that what I do is I'm a bit known for doing user experience Auckland, and I think most people know me for that. But Fiona had remembered me, and she did something that I think is really brave. In this sea of, developers, she just walked up to me, even though I wasn't there. I was just kind of being behind the scenes, and just said, "Hi, I remember you from this, and I just wanted to talk to you." And I just remember that the fact that she took that initiative, and we just had a quick little meeting, catch up, but I never forgot her because of that. And I think that's really important because of the rest of our story. Lastly, we, as we got closer to summertime, the developer manager, they came up with like their top 10, and they brought them in for an interview workshop, which was unusual. That's why I give them a heart. And but it was to allow them to kind of distill that top 10 to 3. Actually, Tomu, you want to share a little bit about that experience with everybody?
Yeah, it was actually quite fun. It wasn't like a usual interview or anything. It was like 10 of us sitting in a room and doing all these random fun challenges. One of them was like we had this plastic pole that we all had to have our finger underneath. And the goal was to get this pole, like a meter up in the air. But the thing was, we couldn't lose contact with the pole with our fingers. So, it seems like a simple challenge, but getting everyone to work together to achieve that was, yeah, we did random things like that, and it was fun.
Yeah. So they did all those things, and they came. What I did to help them out is I actually took all the top 10 and I threw it in a Google slide, and then I gave it to the manager and his team to kind of rank order and figure out which ones they want. That was just being supportive. At this time, I wasn't really expecting anything until they made their selection, and then the guy that was kind of running I guess it was innovation, he sent out an email to everybody and he announced that I was going to be their manager. And I remember going, I mean, I don't think I planned for that. And so, that was just a reality that something had happened and stuff that caused them to decide that they wanted me to lead these interns that they picked. And these are developer interns, right? And so one of the things that I found out were some constraints, as you do in all projects. And the constraint was that the product developing team and could no longer really support these interns because they just had higher priorities. Things happen, every day in a business. Priorities change. So then the question is like, well, how do we support them? On top of that, I already had things to do. I was already on projects, but I realized that what they did is they gave me an opportunity to kind of manage how this project was going to be done, as well as everything. And then lastly, just so you know, it's a summer internship for 3 months. And so that was like the easiest part of the constraints for what I decided that I wanted to figure out what to do with them. Because, I'm walking around going, they just made me manager of these people and they're developers and what do I do? So there's a couple other things that I had to also navigate. And that was, just some of the simple truths that although Steph is a fantastic news organization, they're not really what we consider, a product techie type of company. Their focus is news, storytelling, keeping us informed so that we interact with our democracy. They're not people who actually, have certain things that we come to expect from most product companies, like design systems or cohesive UX practices or research ops. So I had to keep that part in mind. On top of that, and it felt like it happened all in 1 week. It's like all of a sudden I had 3 interns that were like, sorry, we're moving on. We've changed our minds. And look, I want to say that there's nothing wrong with that. And it actually tells us really pretty much about this industry is that there are opportunities. And these young people had opportunities presented to them. 2 of them had different opportunities to go to a different internship. And the designer who I'd been interning and been working with, she had an opportunity to educate herself more. And there's nothing wrong with that. But it made me realize that I had to think how I was going to do this. And it was really based on, my work experiences. And I also knew because of how Steph worked, which is, different than most product companies because they are a news organization, I had to approach them to get the best outcomes. So I decided that I was going to make them all designers. I decided that those 3 developers were going to learn things about stuff, things about business, and also leverage my experiences and try to, what did I do when I first got out of school, out of my uni? I went to a product company that had an actual program for the students that came in, that taught them every month a different part of the business. And that was like a cohort of how you went through learning things. Stuff didn't have any of that. So I wanted to make sure that they could learn at least some professional business etiquette. I also, because when I came in, I didn't meet a lot of the key people. Like I had to do what we designers do and meet people and talk to them. Like I couldn't tell you who the CEO was. I saw her picture, but I could never recognize her, and I wasn't invited to meet her. So I wanted to change that. I wanted to make sure that these young people got to meet key people, to like stakeholder interviews, right? Also, my practice is I kind of learn by doing, and I also teach by doing, and I'm try to be pretty practical in those sense. So I knew that I was going to have to show them those kind of things. On top of that, these are people. 3 of them were developers, right? They studied, things that go with development and architecture, but I had to invite them and teach them how to be a designer or to be a researcher or to do these things that you get information to create something. And then on top of that, the one thing that's nice about not having the support of the development staff is that I didn't have tech constraints, and that I leveraged that by making really simple decisions on how we did the work and where we were going to do the work. And lastly, I wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to learn how to present. I wish that was something I had when I was a young designer, but to know how to present, especially to executives. So I crafted a strategy, and I kind of sold the idea of what I was doing. And I created a pitch strategy to introduce who these interns were and said what they were going to do. They were going to be this Skunk Works team. They were going to challenge us. They were going to break our stuff. They were going to inspire us because they were going to go outside how stuff usually did things. On top of that, I also talked about who I was, the approaches that they might, and the methods, the UX methods that they would use. And hopefully which talk about an outcome, because at the time, the outcome was, how do we make this a thing where we get young people? Because what they were trying to solve, what the thing is, and it's the truth, news is consumed by people like me, older people. We were used to reading the news in the newspaper, and what we were finding is that the younger audience, they just weren't into that. They would be on their phones, they would get a link. And so the questions that we were having is like, this term that I made up, which is millennials and Zoomers, to use our stuff, because I think that's like the most quintessential thing we were trying to figure out. On top of that, I came up with a main milestone, a map of what they were going to do, and then a clear call to action so that I could get people to click on a link, go to a form, put in their info, and let me know so that I can start organizing their stakeholder meetings. And that's kind of how I approached saying, this is how I'm going to get people in my company to basically pay attention to this. So just a little bit more. I just want to talk about the strategy plan, the timeline. So if this is something you would ever do, to give yourself a bit of time to first plan and set your own goals and what you want to get out of that. But make sure that in this map, December, January, and February, like in the middle of Christmas and all this other stuff, I really kind of clearly said I was going to onboard them. They were going to do a few things there, and then we were going to make whatever it is that came to mind. And I know that's a bit scary because we had freedom, right? we had an opportunity to make it what we will. You can either fail or you can succeed. And we chose to just do whatever we can to make that happen. And then lastly was to spend time reflecting. I mean, that's part of the cadence of Agile, but just in normal, I find that as an investment to reflect and learn. So that was the timeline that I gave them. But when we get to how the approach was, I made some decisions that I wanted to teach them things that from a UX capability that were practical, that was easy to learn, and that there were things that they can do as a group instead of by themselves. And I wanted to leverage the capabilities of the design intern because she would already have been exposed to some of these capabilities. But I wanted to go from all the amazing things that we do as designers and just pick the ones that I thought would give the most bang for your buck. And specifically, it had anything to do with talking to people. On top of that, when it came to the process, I basically kept it simple. Like, you could talk about design thinking, you could do a Google search, and you could find all the pretty pictures, and you could see all the theories. But I just went, what, why, how? What's the problem? Why is this problem important to the people that it affects, right? And then how are you going to address it? And kind of keep that in the back of the mind, like every time they would do something like, so what's the deal? Like, why are you doing this? How are you going to make that happen? Just kind of keeping that as an overall consistent theme. Lastly, next thing is I wanted to use staff. So I introduced things to stuff that they're not used to doing. Like we actually use white space. We used, the company mail to ask for people. And the reason is so that these young interns who were learning all these new things, right? They were learning about business. They were learning about design, which I don't think they ever thought they would. And I wanted to make sure that they always had a way to practice on stuff first. So that way they get some of that jitters out of the way, because what they really needed to do was go out into the community and ask questions and find out what was going on with young people. I mean, I could do it, but I'm not a young person. They are young people. And I wanted them to go out in the community and ask these questions. But they had to practice. So they had to feel confident. They had to figure out what they wanted to say and how to say it. And I always said, well, use stuff, practice on them first. And we really appreciate that. And in doing so, the idea was that I was giving them capabilities that anybody could do, really. And it was to allow them, it's to build trust in them. It's for them to grow their confidence, but it also is for me to trust that they will do the right thing. And that was how I thought about, okay, what's practical design thinking? How can I make that happen for a lot of these individuals? So with that said,
what was the skunk?
I think you're going to talk to the Skunk Works. Yeah, I just want to say this is Fiona and Tomu, which are here today. But the other ones you're not going to talk to you won't see is Mona and Cameron, and they were the other two. So Tomu and Fiona, sorry, take it away. Tell them some of the stories.
Fiona?
Sure. So basically, to describe the experience that we had during that time for the internship that we were provided by Summer Tech and stuff, this is the experience that we all felt. And to describe it in an emotional pathway, this is it. This is exactly how we all felt with going through the design thinking process of having to unpack a lot of information. And we actually go deeper into this emotional visual right here that we can see. We actually learned more around how to understand business on the first week when we were actually at the company itself. We learned a lot about how to listen to stakeholder interviews, and Tomu, if I recall correctly, what was that first week like of absorbing information?
Yeah, okay. So in the first week we were pretty much having back-to-back meetings from people from all different departments of stuff, and it was mostly us trying to absorb as much information as possible, and try to start making connections. But there was a lot of information overload, and at that point we were kind of like all over the place in terms of what is our problem, where can we move on from here. So yeah, it was a bit of a chaotic moment at that.
Yeah, I could say that.
For sure.
That the I think it was the guy that was head of innovation was, why are they confused? Why are you making them do these things?
There was just a lot of problems to really absorb from, and it was really interesting, I guess, in the first week, that coming in fresh, new eyes into the business and coming in as the interns, that yeah, I can do this, and learning about, and then trying to actually figure out if we can solve these problems, these business problems here. It was really insightful to listen to every single person inside there that can actually explain about their subject matter, their craft, their focus. And this is, I guess, where we were able to try and like settle down as a team to actually unpack information that we were given and craft up our own understanding, craft up our own assumptions, our own hypotheses on tackling this problem. Again, it was targeting an audience that was relevant to our age group, the zillennial category. Is that correct, Tomu? When we did the wireframing stage, how did that feel when we were going through all that assumptions and thinking?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, it was, once we've got all that information, we made a few assumptions of our own. And I think what we did was we made a list of those assumptions, and we wanted to validate them and make sure it is true, because, we can't just stick to those assumptions and make a product when we don't know if it's true or not. So I think we went around the city, and we just spent one whole day talking to strangers from different areas. Like, some people we knew, some people were just strangers just walking by us, and yeah, we got a lot of information that day doing guerrilla testing.
Yep.
Absolutely. I remember that day as well, like how it was just so scary to actually go out in the field and then just asking these questions, asking the uncomfortable questions, getting the data, getting the insights. And actually I got to really commend Nani to actually allow us to be in a comfortable space inside stuff, to be able to ask these questions in front of our stakeholders and try some little small testing there to get comfortable, and then to go out as a group, never go alone. That's one thing that I carry today forward with me, is that from this learning with Nani and the team, is that you never go alone to do customer testing, customer research. It's always good. It's always best practice to go with someone who can support you, and also make sure that they're the extra scriber to actually cover points that you may have missed or I have missed.
Yeah, and I think that's also to point out is that bit of safety, but from a person who might get asked, oh, can I show you something? I might be more able to answer that if I knew there was a couple people instead of one person, just for that kind of safety. But talk about how you reframe how you got the concept.
Yeah, so and after all of that, information absorption and creating the assumptions and everything, when going through that hackathon period to come up with the quick solution to pitch back to our key stakeholders in the business, we actually took a break. So that time after the Christmas, during December, that's right, December time, we had the Christmas break. We came back, recharged, refreshed, and decided, okay, this is not what the key business stakeholder wanted. So we had to pick an actual target that we are comfortable to go out and actually validate further and resonate with, realizing that this is what these target audiences wanted. And from there on, that's where we actually had a pivoting moment where we had to actually go and quickly find people within our inner circle that could validate these are the problems that they're facing. Because again, we never have the luxury to be in that position of what they're going through, what their real experiences are. Whereas we can only have these assumptions. What do you think, Tomu? Was that the pivoting moment for you as well?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the timeline, I think that was after we came back from our Christmas holidays. So it was good to be able to get a break and absorb all the information and like become more comfortable with it. And I think it was because of that we started to realize that we were in the mindset that we had to create something that was related to stuff, the company. But the proper way of making a product is to figure out what the core problem is, and the core problem wasn't the company, it wasn't stuff that was making that was it. It was the fact that younger people didn't connect with the type of content that they were producing, and what we realized was younger people like us like to listen to authentic stories from all these content creators, and it was at that moment when we realized that we had something there. And I think then we started to formulate the idea.
So I think if I could just jump in here, one thing that they did that I think was more unique than what Steph did is that they went out and actually talked to a lot of people. They talked to a lot of people to understand the program, the frame, the understanding of the problem, or what was concerning to people. And that helped inform them about this concept, which they then also were using more people to validate the concept. And I think this was also new for Steph because they did things like that, but it wasn't to the level and the amount of people that we were talking to. And I think that was key for the team to actually switch their brain and reframe the problem and then come up with something to solve that versus what they had already learned when they came in. And so I think that was a key moment to share with you, to think about, is just reframing the program. And then once they did that, they presented to the executives. So why don't you guys talk about that?
Sure. So when we actually presented to the stakeholder executives, that was the really kind of like, I guess, the moment where we had to be able to tell a good story, a story that they can understand that we have actually done all the ideation. We've gone through all the processes to be able to confidently say, this is the solution. This is the actual solution that you're for the business and for the actual target audience that you were actually intending to achieve, to attract from the very get-go. What do you think, Tomu? How was that presenting to the executives moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think once we've had that presentation, there was definitely a brewing of curiosity around the business, and after that, we started getting a lot more help from different people around stuff, and they were coming up to us being, so curious about what we were doing, and they started to offer us help. And I think that was at that point where we split off. Well, we didn't really split off. We started to focus more on our strength and divided up the work accordingly. That was when we were a whole lot more settled and like we could focus on the individual things.
Yeah, I want to add too that we got more help from people. That we actually got there were other consultants that came to Steph, but they helped work on, say, a business roadmap and a business strategy, which would lie really outside my comfort zone as a designer. But I was really so happy to have these people who had, they had their abilities and their strengths to work with the team and actually, bring it all together into something that they could keep, and kind of start documenting and tracing, some kind of line. And you kind of see it behind there where all that work was coming together into a concept that they could, just hold on to and think about later. But they captured all that information. I really appreciate that. All right. Shall we just move on?
Yep.
So I just, the next couple of slides, you guys go ahead and just talk about some of these key, we can't talk about everything. It's overwhelming. We need another 24 hours. But why don't you guys just talk about a few of the things that we did with more detail, please.
Of course, absolutely, sure thing. I mean, again, the pivoting moment, that was coming back from the break, the Christmas break, recharged, refreshed. And let me just say that as a designer, failure is always quite personal. And I think in life, for me, it's always really scary to be able to say, I failed at this. I didn't meet what this other person wanted because they didn't see where I was going at. And for us to actually recover from all these rejections, we go through a lot of rejections in life. This right here was us coming back and just trying out something quickly, trying out something new and fast, and talking to more people again to actually align with them. And this is exactly something that's missing in their lives, but we didn't want to hint too much of the actual solution. Tomu, how did you feel about the pivoting moment coming in from developer perspective to a designer perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt like that. Like one key thing that I took away from this internship is that it's okay to make mistakes. Like, especially when you're first starting out with this thing, which you're completely like, it's completely new to us. Making mistakes and learning from it, you can grow a lot more than being too afraid to do something in the first place. And this pivoting moment that we were doing was, I saw it as like a circular process of, creating an idea and testing that idea and realizing it's not going to work. And then you're back to the drawing board. And by doing that process of, going back and forth, of creating new ideas and doing all that, that's when you start to really understand the problem. So like, even if the first idea doesn't work, that's okay. You can keep moving forward and you can learn from it.
For sure. And it was, again, just really thanks to Nani to actually sit back and then trust that process, trust that we are able to at least recover from and just keep iterating, keep refining. Again, that emotional swiggle of a line where nothing's a straight pathway. It is always a constant work in development. And this is, again, where we were able to empathize with the content creators as well. We were listening to what their experiences were like, what they were going through as content creator, and how they were being authentic with their storytelling, with the way that they were producing out their content to reach out with their own inner circles. I mean, for us to actually, for me to open up to all my inner circle of connections and getting them to actually come and have a conversation with our team, our software engineers, and mentor herself, like reaching out from small range to large scale. That was also quite exciting as well, to be able to hear and empathize with a person to person in the same room here. How did you feel about this one, Tomu?
Yeah. So I think, what we did was we reached out to all these content creators, as Fiona just said, and we spoke to, I think, around like 10 to 15 people with like massive amounts of followers. For example, we had Bryce Langston from Living Big in a Tiny House. So I think recently reached like 4 million subscribers or something, which is pretty crazy that we spoke to someone like that. And yeah, again, I would circle back to like saying, it's really scary to talk to these people. Like, but again, like we're all human, and doing it, each time you do it, you become more comfortable with it. And by the end of it, after talking to a lot of people, it became second nature almost. Also, Nani, I think we lost our presentation. If you want to share the screen again.
Sorry?
I think we lost our presentation. Could you share the screen again?
Oh, bugger. I'm glad you guys kept on talking. I didn't even notice that. Let's try again. Do you get that now?
But yeah, if you were to actually picture out that these other content creators, they are literally the people that would be generating out a bunch of like Yes, now we can now see it. But yeah, these are people who are actually just sharing their craft, sharing what they do day to day, their little side hustles. Like, for example, Femke, she's a designer that I reached out to on Twitter, and I just had a very general conversation saying, would you mind just hearing out what we have in store and help us validate that this is the pathway, because she's got a number of followers for the design community, because she works at Uber Eats, and it was lovely to actually understand her process, understand her community as well. And my friend Joe Baroni, who had a podcast as well, and we were able to at least learn about the lows as well of his experience, and that was something that again, we never had the opportunity because we have never been in that position, whereas they have, and that was something very valuable to validate and actually understand with testing. For Tomu,
Yeah.
I guess like coming from a developer perspective, again, doing all of this kind of like talking with people, understanding the technicalities of it, or at least how they would tackle the technicalities of dealing with content producing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, again, I would like to say, I came in as a developer thinking I'll be doing development work, whereas we really didn't do that. We're doing more product design, and I was working more on like the user experience sort of side of things, doing all these research, talking to people. It's quite important to have that open mind. Like whenever you get a job, you're not guaranteed to be doing a certain things that you want to be doing, but getting out of that comfort zone, doing things that you've never done before, you can learn so much from it. And yeah, it's a good way to grow your perspective on things.
For sure. And I bet right now everyone's super excited to actually see what the actual the concept is. And this is it. This is our high fidelity concept, where we actually try to resonate with content creators and who are wanting to be authentic influencers. And this is actually very similar to what Clubhouse and Twitter Spaces is to this day. As you may have seen all over on social media, these tech giants actually have actually launched something along the similar space and line that we were thinking as well, of creating a space for people to connect and communicate and have a community to actually speak on a topic that they are passionate towards and they want to generate content together, collaboration together. This is something that I've noticed with last year's pandemic, right now COVID post-pandemic, learning about how like people cannot be alone. You can try being alone, but a person will at least find a community or a pet or a plant, something to just be able to connect with and grow out content, grow out some sort of like learning and collaboration. What do you think, Tomu, when we actually came to this point? How was this like from all that crazy creation?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I think collaboration was a key thing here. Especially living in this current world of a pandemic right now, like we've realized that collaboration is so important, and the reason that all these new apps are coming up is I think there was a void of that. In the digital space, there wasn't too many collaboration tools, and it's cool to see that what we were working on before all of that was along the same lines as these two products. So,
and I just want to point out, and this is just an aside, but this is when we found out that Tomu actually could design in Adobe XD. What you're looking at with the pages inspired by ideas and things, both of them worked on it, but definitely Tomu was doing what visual design, and the user experience, and that was a surprise because he's a developer. He's into AI. He does coding, and yet I think this is really special that he can do that. But yeah, that's kind of what it is. The reason we don't show too much of it is that Steph is still interested in the idea, so we don't really want to get in the way of that. But we will point out that we weren't alone. There's other people who are doing this, and it's out now for people to get together, to collaborate, and who knows, to make content. So we just think that's pretty great. But let's just move on and just talk a wee bit about our outcomes. I noticed that, Tomu's talked quite a bit about learning from mistakes and keeping an open mind. But Fee, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the things you thought?
So after everything that we have learned and how much I resonate with all of this as well with Tomu, is that importantly, I've learned from it as a designer that you really need that collaboration with your software developers. They need to be able at that conversation to see what is the future state and whether or not this is actually possible to be built, and if this is actually not going to be another digital clutter or an empty product. And one important thing I've noticed is that we tend to always say that you need to be able to read and write. And I think after all I've seen so far and how we need to avoid siloed worlds is that we should be able to also draw. If we can draw, we should be able to read from that drawing and also write about it. In my case, that's how I would articulate my way of communication. That's just something that along the line of growing up, we've tend to forgotten about drawing. And I hope that in some ways that people would never forget to have these kind of skill sets, to actually keep them all in the back of their minds and bring it forward when you're communicating with your peers and your collaborations.
Yep. And I'm just going to add mine. Mine was the one in the middle. And that is basically, I just had to trust. I had to trust myself that I can share information. I had to trust the design process that I can share with people who were never exposed to it and could follow along and do something about it. So I had to trust the people. I had to trust stuff would somehow support us and the people there, and they did, and we really appreciate that whole learning thing. But it's really about having some confidence and trusting that system to be able to do what you need to do really quickly and come up with an idea. So I want to just move on and say that, as all good things come to an end, my young interns were moving on. I had 2 that were going to Australia, one to study a master's, one to work. And I had 2 that were going back to their university and finishing up their life. And one of the things that I kind of do is I don't know how to say it. I mean, it's definitely, I'm Hawaiian, I'm American, but my culture is Polynesian, is Pacific. And I brought with me is like, talk about be generous with your mana, but to deal with your mana, which is your status, shaped with your dignity. It's shaped by your actions, your environment, your influences, and your experiences. And so one of the things that I just do, and again, I think this is where it's my generation. I tend to do things with paper and pen. Is I had everybody sit together in one concept just to write each other a note. It was at the end of the project. We were losing, people were moving on, and I just wanted everybody to write a note to each other, just to thank them and to show gratitude. And we still have our notes, and just a little bit of some of the things we said. And I just want to say, Fiona, take over what you do with your note every day.
Yes, of course. I mean, I'm so grateful again to what your teachings were. Like, this is something that I have always kept on bringing up about how I love tokens of appreciation. I love little small things like this that I take it with me wherever I go. And especially in my new current position, I would always want to read it before I start my day, because it is who I am. And it's actually great to get receive all this kind of information from my great, awesome team, to just show that, like, this has been great about working with you. This is exactly who you are. I love your brand. Yeah. I'm going to stay true to it. How about you, Tomu?
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that. When you're working in this sort of area, you're moving so quickly that you sometimes forget to, stop and appreciate the people you're working with. And I think it's good to, take some time out and show your appreciation towards them.
And Nani, we've got about 10 minutes left before we conclude our session. I would like you, definitely, if you have another thought there, we also have some questions over in our Q&A.
Oh, good. Oh, great. Well, I think we're almost done. Just quickly talk about, so I just want to say that all the interns are doing great. You know, they have jobs, they're finishing up their masters. But the thing I'm really proud of is that Tomu and Fiona still collaborate. They're working on a new project called Nawi. You guys want to quickly just talk about that a wee bit, please?
Yeah, so what happened was Fiona invited me to do a hackathon last year called AI, Microsoft AI for Accessibility, which was about how do we utilize AI to help people that are disabled. And currently, yeah, we're still working on the idea of, you know, how can we help people with visual disabilities, and yeah, that's something that we're hustling with right now.
So I'm just going to move on. I just want to talk a little bit about me. So, you know, after they left, COVID hit us just as it hit everybody else in the world, and we changed a lot of things. We never got to do a retrospective to see how did this work out to become, you know, do we do a graduate program and what that would look like. We just focused with the things with COVID because it affected the business dramatically. We ended up, the design team went from being business and strategy to delivery, which I can say is, I'm not sure that's always like where I would like to be. But what ended up happening is that, and I just going to say it, is that I was laid off. I was laid off for COVID, and it's a different way that they do it, but it's nonetheless uncomfortable and weird. You know, basically, I just went ahead and took care of myself. I played games. I did arts. I just took care of my mental health because it was really stressful and it was really uncomfortable. And then I just put all my love and all that I am into building User Experience Auckland as a business, in the sense of it's an organization that helps a lot of these designers come together, learn things, share things, to grow, but also to network, because in New Zealand, that's just really key. You have to know people to find that next gig. So this is all of our information. Go ahead and take a screenshot or whatever, but you can find us on you know, Twitter and whatnot, but just go to our link tree. And if you ever want to talk to me more about this, you have my Calendly link. And, you know, just moving on, you know, I helped do this, right? This was just being practical. This was being startup-y in an enterprise. And I'm really, really, really proud of this. And I'm really proud that I know these young people and that they were able to achieve something really cool by just running the process. So with that said, just want to say thank you to everybody. We have something, we call it kia kaha, stay strong, which you tell everybody here in New Zealand, but especially since we know the world is still dealing with COVID and still dealing with the outcomes of that, and to say stay strong. I want to thank 24 Hours UX and UX Auckland and my interns. And I just want to thank my husband, because this is probably the only time I ever thank him for putting up with living with a designer and a creative mind. But lastly is, when they all left, I made sure to give them something. And like me, it's paper and pens and art supplies. But I left them the same message. And it was always, you know, to spread your wings, to be generous with your mana, but trust your gut, to say you are enough, and Attempto, which was the model of my German university when I attended that for a couple of years as a youth. And what it means is I dare, you know, go strong, go hard. And with that said, this is us. This is us now. Here's all of our information.
Good stuff. Well, Nani, was excellent. All right, well, we've got about 5 minutes left before we... Excellent. Well, we got about 5 minutes left before end of our break. I figured I'd throw out a couple questions. I did want to let everybody know that we will stick around a little bit after, but you're more than welcome to head to another event, because there are some others starting at 9. But I'm going to throw a question out here right now. One of the questions that came over was, how hard was it to get into solutions as fresh interns?
Ooh.
It was definitely.
That is quite the question.
Yeah, well, it definitely was quite uncomfortable for I don't know about everyone else, but definitely for me when I first started it. Like, all the work that I've been doing at university didn't really line up with the things that we were doing here. And again, it's good going through that and understanding that it's not always going to be comfortable. You're always going to be jumping around in this chaotic sort of environment, but like Nani said, trusting that process and believing that you can get there. Once each time you fail, you're learning something. That's how I feel.
That's a great answer. I'll throw this next one at Fiona then. So this question is from Helen, wants to know, as a 3-year student, I find it hard to find an internship. Is there any way to stand out in the crowd and gain interview job opportunities? And I'll also throw that one at Nani too. And why not Tomu? Why? Let's do the whole thing. But I'm going to start.
Yes, sure. Well, with that kind of question, I would actually say it is scary to actually go out into the public and face people. It is terrifying. I am quite the person that's I'm the person that I guess looks quite confident and would actually want to be the type to just talk to people. But actually, it's also understanding that everyone is like you as well. We're just humans. It doesn't. It is not that scary to just try and send out a general message saying, "Hey, I resonate with what you have to say. Can we please spend some time to catch up? I would love to understand more about your experience and how I could try and become like you and get to where you are at as well." And there are people that wants to help. If it just honestly, I've always said this to many times to many people, saying, if you put in the 70%, I will meet you halfway. I will meet you further, actually, if you can put in that effort as well to go and find what you want, know what you want, and I will work really hard to help you get there.
If I ask that is join some communities, join your local community, meet people. A lot of these communities are really great. They are grassroots. They are, like, just last week we had a portfolio meetup just to talk about our portfolio. Get invested in that and make relationships with your local meetup groups or your local education groups. And I think that's a great way to make connections and to maybe find your next gig. Anything else?
Yeah, I definitely agree with both of you. I think this will resonate highly with how
Absolutely.
Fiona got the internship. Was how, like, Fiona just went up to talk to Nani about, hey, I met you at the UX Auckland. I know you from UX Auckland, and just having that one simple conversation was able to get Fiona into this job. So talking to people is really important.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Absolutely.
That's some great advice. Yeah, and I know we've got like 2 minutes left. I have another question, so I just wanted to let everybody know that we are going to stick around just a little bit longer. I guess we're going to have an after party here, Nani, and we're going to hang around just a little bit longer. Got another question, but there definitely are other sessions starting at 9, so we want everyone here to make sure you don't miss those. But of course, stick around because we're having such a great conversation here. Well, there's another question, and Nani, I don't know if this one is out to you, but we do have one from Marvin that said, for the groups that had a project that didn't go so well, so they found out that towards the end it wasn't viable, there really wasn't a lot of good iterations, that they ran into a lot of problems. Did you still encourage them to present their case study?
That's a great question, because I think we talked about, I think part of our thing that's our craft is that I was able to you are not going to do what you thought you were going to do, but I'm going to teach you some things and we're going to try this out. If I had gotten the original team, I don't know if I would have been successful. I don't know if we would have made anything. If we didn't have feedback from, the people at stuff or whatnot, I don't know if we would have been successful. To me, it was just another project in the sense that could happen anyway. There's no guarantees, but I wanted to make sure that I did all the things I knew would help make it a guarantee or help create that and leverage the abilities of these individuals in such a way that they could come up with an idea. This was like the second time I had done something like this with stuff. The first time was actually with Stuff People to create a product, which is now out there, which is great. But this was this was just me experimenting a wee bit, and I'm still experimenting in the sense that I want to know what happens as they go in their career. I want to see what it is 5 years from now. What are the things they're still using that they learned from this experience that is helping them to succeed at their job or whatever they're trying to do? So that's kind of, I don't know if I answered the question, but I think it's just a little bit realistic about how work can be in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it sounds like, even though it could have went off the rails, it's good to at least address it because you can learn from it. It sounds like the message.
Absolutely.
Message.
That is it.
Well, we're right at time. I think I've one more question. Actually, it's from me. So I had a question. Sure. I just wondered, what was the biggest thing that you actually learned? Sorry. Was there like one overarching thing that you remember from your internship that you walked away with?
Yeah.
The overarching thing from me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Well, basically, I think importantly is the communication and collaboration. We are all different in our own unique ways, but we're human. We walk the same, we breathe the same air. If we can communicate in some form and actually resonate with each other, I believe that's how we can create a great team dynamic. What about you, Tomu? Working with me, how was that like?
Oh, yeah, I mean, it was fun, definitely. I mean, the thing that I learned from my internship, which I've spoke about, was, making mistakes is okay. I think that was the most important thing. I'm often the type of person that's so afraid of making mistakes that, I end up not doing something in the first place. So yeah, like doing the hustle with Fiona, like I'm scared of doing these kind of things, scared of like presenting, like I was pretty scared of doing this today, but being comfortable with making mistakes, being comfortable that you're not a perfect being was really helpful.
Yeah, really good advice.
Yeah, that's good advice.
Well, Nani, any parting words before we head off into the sunset here? It was an excellent presentation. I learned a lot, and it was really great to hear your story.
Well, thank you, Mark. I just want to say I was really proud. There's a lot of weird things that go off, and I don't have any weird feelings towards stuff or anything like that. It's owned now by a woman, a Kiwi woman. She's putting her mana in it, and I really want them to succeed because I think it's good for New Zealand. It's good for us to have it, and they're improving themselves, But I can just say always, just try your best, experiment. Stay connected, be practical, and my goal is always to be a member of these people's lives and just to listen to them and to be there for them. Just because that thing stopped didn't mean that I didn't stop caring about them, and that I expect to go through the rest of my life and hopefully theirs with some kind of connection as that we're creating something, and hopefully I'll find who knows what will happen. I haven't really given that more thought than just keep on keeping on. But yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity. I think we learned a lot, and we really, really appreciate it, and we wish you a good day.
Thank you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you. Enjoy UX Auckland.
Don't forget, everybody, that's heading, so head over there. We're heading into hour 21, believe it or not.
Woo!
Getting there. A couple more to go.
All right, guys. Have a great day, everybody. Bye. Kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora.
Kia ora, kia ora. Yep. Bye-bye. Thanks, Tomu. Thanks, Fiona. Thanks, Marc. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.